I believe, will be our first song, 480. Let's sing. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Heir of salvation, purchased of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story, this is my song. Praise my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song. Praise my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, perfect delight. Visions of rapture now burst on my side. Angels descending, bring from above. Echoes of mercy, whispers of love. This is my story, this is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song. Praising my Savior all the day long. Perfect submission, all is at rest. I am my Savior, am happy and blessed. Watching and waiting, looking above. Filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story, this is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. 128, hymn number 528. I know that my Redeemer lives and never breaks for me. I know eternal life He gives, from sin and sorrow free. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that eternal life He gives. I know that my Redeemer lives. He will that I should wholly be in word and thought, indeed. Then I His holy face may see, when from this earth I'm free. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know eternal life He gives. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that unto men will His saving grace. me. A home hast thou made with hands most wonderful to see. I know that my Redeemer lives. I know eternal life He gives. I know that my Redeemer lives. 613. Hymn number 613. Time is filled with swift transition. Not on earth unmoved can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Oh, through God's unchanging hand. Oh, through God's unchanging hand. Oh, through God's unchanging hand, build your hopes on things eternal. Oh, through God's unchanging hand, trust in Him who will not leave you, whatsoever years may bring. If my earthly friends forsaken, still more closely to Him cling. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. When your journey is completed, if to God you have been true, and bright the home in glory, your enraptured soul will view. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Oh, to God's unchanging hand. Mark hymn number 915. Hymn number 915. That goes this.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I guess I should have forwarded you that text. I got history there. Well, thank you. Yeah, sorry about that. That's my fault. That's sometimes communication. Well, Mike had suggested moving the boys up, but I knew they weren't prepared, so it wasn't fair to them. So we're going to pick up in the life of Paul, and then Mike is, the boys will be next week, and then Mike will be doing his after them, finishing up his thing on music. So Interesting enough, we've got to the point where Paul is headed to Rome. Who was emperor at this time? Any ideas?
I think Nero.
Nero. And the thing of it is, if you go back and you read a lot of the things about Nero, Nero had several good years and then several bad years. Like something happened. So, and this is in the time of those good years. So that's an interesting thing. And what I mean was he was considered a good emperor during that time. And the interesting part is, and we'll give you a little heads up, Paul's first offense is going to be before Nero. And he's going to be set free. His second offense, after Nero blames the Christians for burning Rome, and legend has it he is put to death, what Timothy indicates. When we look at chapter 27, that's where we're going today. That's the journey. That's most of the journey anyway, toward Rome, where Paul has made his appeal to Caesar, and he has been granted his appeal to Caesar. And I guess at some point, since he appeared before Agrippa, and Agrippa declared his innocence, but wasn't nothing Agrippa could do. Wasn't nothing did. And Agrippa did his white knuckle escape, so to speak. Evidently, Festus figured out something to write to send to Nero. And A.T. Bowles did this outline of chapter 27. We're going to kind of look at that way. And, first 5 verses are aboard the ship Adramyttium. The next 7 verses, and in fact, from this point on, he'll be aboard that ship of Alexandria until it shipwrecks. And then there's a storm and there's a shipwreck. And there's some things that we want to look at. He has this centurion named Julius. Hey, fellas. Whatever y'all got, put away. I will. You are. Okay? Julius is important in our story with Paul because he needs to make a difference. And it changes things. We have some notices of some people accompanying Paul, Luke, and Aristarchus of Macedonia. In verse 1 and 2, we read, and when it was decided that we would sail to Italy, they delivered Paul and some other prisoners to one named Julius, a centurion of the Augustan regiment. So entering the ship of Adrium, we put to sea, meaning to sail along the coast of Asia. Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, was with us. So we know we at least means Luke and Paul, and Aristarchus, and I'm probably butchering that name, so forgive me. We have the point here that we have where he came from. The scriptures back all this up, and that he ends up staying with Paul in Rome. In Acts 20, verse 4, when Paul is coming to Jerusalem, and Sopater of Berea accompanied him to Asia. Also Aristarchus and Sidicus of Thessalonians and Gaius of Derbe. Now there's one I can say. And Timothy and Tychicus and Timotheus of Asia. So here's all the people that originally accompanied Paul going to Jerusalem. And here's that Aristarchus. And so he is there then. He is with Paul in And Paul calls him a fellow prisoner in Colossians chapter 4:10. And along with Mark and because Barnabas is supposed to be going to Colossae, with Paul. And he is mentioned a Philemon, but he's not called a fellow prisoner. Epaphras, my fellow prisoner in Christ Jesus, greets you, as do Mark, Aristarchus, Demas, Luke, and my fellow laborers. These people are with him. They are accompanying him in Rome. They're there in Rome. So Aristarchus seems to be there through the whole imprisonment, along with Luke. And Luke is mentioned in almost every letter that he writes when he's in prison. So here is where we're at. I hope that shows up, but yeah, it shows up a lot better there than it does back here. You can see where we're at. He's starting out down that red line, down at Caesarea, going up to Sidon, and then Paphos. It's an interesting, we'll look at the verse and I'll point some things out, but the realization that they go down around the bottom of Cyprus, because some have him going up above Cyprus, some in this journey. And in verse 3, it tells the next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius treated Paul kindly and gave him liberty to go to his friends and receive care. So obviously this guy is befriending him. Perhaps even what was given to him by Festus indicated that, this man is going to Caesar, you give him some liberty, he's probably innocent. Some things that go to him. And so some reason he befriended him. And then they went on to Myra. And we had put to sea from there. We sailed under the shelter of Cyprus. That's why it should be that south side of Cyprus, not a north side. Because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the sea, which is off Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. Therefore, the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing to Italy, and he put us on board. So it would seem that they knew the one ship would only be able to take them so far. And so when they get there, they take a church. So we haven't gone to Cyrus, and you can see Myra up there at the point up there. That coastline is an interesting coastline. Ships still sail through there now. Cruise ships still go through there. And there's lots of ports up there. They lead us up there to the north. There's Rhodes. Rhodes, it was a major port at that time, and it still is a big port city. It's an island shaped kind of like a arrowhead almost. So, and it's got a great big fortress built around it. So it still goes there. And then they went to Sindus, from Sindus to Fairhaven. And we had sailed slowly many days and arrived with difficulty off Sindus. The wind not permitting us to proceed, we sailed under the shelter of Crete off Salmon. Passing it with difficulty, we came to a place called Fairhavens, near the city of Lycia. Now, here's the thing that you have to wonder, and I guess they're probably doing like a cruise ship today. You might get a day in some of these ports. How much preaching do you think Paul did if he was granted liberty? And if you think about it, you look at some of these places. This is Crete in the New Testament, because like the map we have before didn't show a whole lot of what was in on Crete. Paul had been to these places. So he knew these places. So it's interesting. Now, the thing they're going to try to do next is decide to go to Phoenix, because the belief is Fairhaven is not a good place to winter. Notice where much time had been spent, and sailing was now dangerous because the fast was already over. Paul advised them, saying, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss. not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives. Now, here's the question. What's the big deal about this fast? And what is the fast that he's talking about? Any ideas? Well, it's the fast that ended with the Day of Atonement. And we go back to Leviticus 16, we see there should be a statute forever for you in the 7th month. And on the 10th day of the month, you shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether a native, your own country, or a stranger who dwells among you. For on that day, the priest shall make atonement for you to cleanse you. Now, we'll stop there for a second. When it says you shall afflict your souls, it's not just have godly sorrow, so to speak. It was literally to not eat or drink. To fast completely. And take that point. And notice that you may be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall afflict your souls. It is a statute forever, and the priest who is anointed and consecrated to administer as a priest in his father's place shall make atonement and put on the linen clothes, the holy garments. Then he shall make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tabernacle meeting, for the altar, and he shall make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. There shall be an everlasting statute for you to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did this as the Lord commanded Moses. Now I was thinking today about those holy garments and a priesthood. What does Peter call us?
A royal priesthood.
A royal priesthood. So what kind of garments should we be wearing? Holy garments. Not like some of my shirts that got little holes in them from being worn out. Not that kind of holy, but clean. You read in Revelation, those who had their garments washed as white as snow by the blood of Christ. Isn't that kind of indicating of how our spiritual being should be? If we're going to be of a royal priesthood and be able to go to our high priest, we should be striving to keep our garments clean. Kind of makes that idea that you can be saved without repentance, contrary to the scriptures. Even they were told to, mourn over their sin, so to speak, afflict their souls.
And here you're not talking about literal garments.
No, we're talking about spiritual garments. Spiritual garments. But that's the point. We, free of sin, clear of sin. And that's where we're going. We're spiritual. And know this shall be an everlasting statute for you to make atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as the Lord commanded Moses. So Moses did this, and Leviticus had Aaron do it. And there a continued reminder. Then there comes a question. Should we go on? Paul's brought that up. It's going to be dangerous if we go on. And here the fast, he says, we've gone by as a reference to the Jewish Day of Atonement, usually occurring about the time of the autumnal equinox, and thus setting the time here is about October 1st. The Mediterranean was not safe for ancient vessels after September 15th until about March 15th. Now this is Kaufman's commentary. Some are given that late September, early October, almost all of them are given that. So the idea of knowing what the weather is playing a role in it, what the weather's like. And so when Paul brings it up, and he says, you go back and you look, let me go back a little bit here. I'm going to go back a lot more than I want to, or have to go back. There we go. Notice the dangerous part called the path, and notice he says, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only the cargo and ship, but also our lives. Here's the big question. Is Paul speaking from experience, inspiration?
We don't know, but I favor the latter.
Well, I see your point. How many shipwrecks had Paul been in? 3 before this. And in Corinthians, he says 3 times. I've been shipwrecked 3 times. So Paul's got a little bit of experience in the matter, you think?
Well, so would the captain of the ship that overrode him.
Yeah, but you know, here's the difference. What's captain of the ship want?
To make money. I understand. Deliver the goods.
Yeah, he wants to deliver the goods, because if he don't deliver the goods, he's not gonna make any money. But then there's the other point of it is, I think there's experience. And, you know, we don't know how much is inspiration, how much is instinct. But wait a minute. And how much God is using his own providence in inching Paul that way. Let me put it that way. Maybe not verbally inspiring, but planting thoughts.
I believe because he included also the loss of life in this, that this is his perception of the way that this voyage is going to end, because later on he's told by God that they will not be lost of life.
Yeah. So I tend to lean a little bit that way, I perceive, but at the same time, I'm not that God didn't encourage him to speak up. Because I want to discount that. We look for things like that as being miraculous, you know, and we get fearful of that sometimes. And I'm gonna be honest, I come up with some things that pop in my head sometimes that I just know I'm not that smart. And we get some thoughts sometimes, you know, that just hit us. And I think it is a little bit drawn on that, but I'm not going to discount the fact that God may be leaning toward it just because of the fact, what Joey said, we don't know. Everything we talk about here is going to be a matter of opinion.
Everything happened, he said there, except.
Everything happened except for the loss of lives.
He nailed it.
He nailed it pretty good.
So I don't know. I can't.
So,
The word
no,
perceive.
that's what I'm saying. I don't know. So whatever we decide is a matter of opinion.
He says, I perceive. That would suggest, Paul talking, but it's hard to be sure.
Well, let me tell you this. If it was all a gut feeling, it was a pretty good gut.
Yeah, he called
Because he got everything but that last point. And so, and you never know.
And God
he didn't
said
receive a
it.
vision. He didn't receive a vision at this point. He makes no mention of vision or anything of that. That's one thing we have to look at. Yes, sir?
And God stepped in and told him, if you'll do such and such, there'll be no loss of life.
Yeah. Now that's
So
one thing. If nobody leaves the ship,
Yeah, so.
there'll be no loss of life. Ron?
The Greek word for perceive is theorio, which we get theory from. It also is translated speculate.
Well, I understand what you're saying. Paul's nowhere indicating that God told him that,
Did.
but it still comes down to this.
Well, there's another word for perceive that God tells us, it's oida.
And I understand that, and I'm not going to get into a dispute over words, because it comes back to this. Can you say 190% that this was all Paul?
No, I can't say.
Can you say that it was all God? That's what it comes back to, opinion.
Yeah. I perceive it sounds like Paul.
I perceive it does sound like Paul, but where that thought came from, or that perception of, I know Kaufman, he sits there and he talks to this, is not about inspiration. His point is that it is completely Paul and based on his experiences. But now, if he'd have said, we'll end with disaster and much loss and stop there, I'd agree 100% that this was all Paul. But then he goes on, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives. Now he's going a little further than that. And honestly, this, if God had not intervened, what would have happened? Well, let's just wait and let's look at it. Just keep that in mind. I'm going to tell you the truth. You know what my opinion is? Y'all know how I pretty well do my opinions. I don't know. I haven't gathered that opinion yet. So, huh?
I don't know either.
I thought, honestly, I think it's a little bit of both. That's what I honestly believe. Okay, so anyway, nevertheless, the centurion was more persuaded by the helmsman and the ownership than by the things spoken by Paul. Why? Why would he be more persuaded than by Paul? Joey, I think you got the right idea.
Paul just wanted to delay.
Paul was just a passenger on the ship. What's he know about sailing ships?
There you go. Here's an experienced captain.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, it's good to go. And notice the thing of it is, they're not wanting to go all the way to Italy. They're just wanting to go around the island of Phoenix. So probably there, kind of like the SS Minnow. We're only talking about 2 or 3 days here. We'll be all right. We can go around here a little bit. We're just going up the coastline. I'll show you that in a minute, but that's kind of the deal. And notice, and this fitted too, because the harbor was not suitable to winter in, the majority advised to set sail from there also. If by any means they could reach Phoenix, a harbor of Crete opening toward the southwest and northwest, and winter there. So they're saying this wasn't a good place just to sit out and wait for the winter. And notice it wasn't just the helmsman, the ship, helmsman and the owner. The majority of the crew said, hey, surely we can go here.
Nothing can mess up something worse than a committee.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's kind of like when you get that flashing light on your gas gauge that says you're low on fuel. And you go, well, surely I got a little more mileage from what it said. And you have to put it in neutral to coast into the gas pump. Then you go, okay, now I know how long we got. But you think you can. Sometimes you get that idea. And that's what they wanted. And see, if you notice, they're there in Fair Havens. They're planning to go up to Phoenix. That's their goal. So, what? At most, what is it? A couple of days? 2 or 3 days? A ship, if everything goes well?
And it's sheltered from the north wind. That's what they were worried about.
Yeah.
They sailing on the south side of the island.
They didn't want a northeasterner to come in. So then, but they don't make it. We talk about it. Notice when the south wind blew softly, nice little breeze from the south. Oh, that south wind blew, that'll carry us right on up there, right? Nice little breeze. Suppose that they obtained their desire, putting out to sea, they sailed close by Crete. But not long after, a tempestuous headwind arose called Euroclydon. Now, I wanted to look that up. This is from Eastman's Revised Bible Dictionary. Southeast billow, the name of the wind which blew in the Adriatic Gulf and which struck the ship in which Paul was wrecked on the coast of Malta. Euroclydon, northeast wind, it is called a tempest wind, as literally rendered as a typhonic wind or typhoon. It is the modern Gregalia or Levanter. It says, see Jonah 1:4. Same kind of tempest storm that they ended up throwing Jonah overboard for. So here's that point. It wasn't just a wind going from the north to the south. but it was a strong wind. Yeah, northeastern, we call them today. It was, and what's the problem with a sailboat?
Driven by the wind.
It's driven by the wind. So when the ship was caught and could not head into the wind, we let her drive. What does that mean, we let her drive?
Let the wind blow.
Ran with the wind.
Yeah, let the wind take her where she wanted. And running under the shelter of an island called Claudia, we secured the skiff with difficulty. What's a skiff? Huh? Small boat?
Lifeboat of sorts.
Lifeboat of sorts. Yeah. You can see them even on sailboats today. If they're towing them, they're a little bit behind them and they use them like when they put into a harbor with a bigger sailboat. They don't have a port, so to speak, or a dock. They use them to go to the beach or the land. Huh?
Bass boat.
What?
Bass boat.
A bass boat? Yeah.
Anything smaller than a ship we fish out of.
Yeah. When they had taken it on board, they used cables to undergird the ship. Why would they put cables up under the ship?
To hold it together.
Hold it together, strengthen it.
Slow it down.
Oh, that-
Yeah. But mainly give it more strength. And fearing lest they should run aground on the serious sands, they struck sail and so were driven. These Syrtis sands, I don't think I have that. Yeah. They were what were called places of African quicksand. They would fill in down there. There were some north of Africa, and even on the northeastern side of Africa, that where ships would get caught up in these, and it was almost like being in quicksand. And so the more they tried to get loose, the more they stuck. So they struck sail and were driven. And because we're exceedingly tempest tossed, the next day they lightened the ship. What are they doing?
What thing go?
Throwing everything out. They really felt like, at first they started out, this is what we don't need. This is what we don't have to have. So on the third day, we threw the ship's tackle overboard with our own hands. Well, Luke saying now, we're helping. We're all helping get stuff overboard.
Was it taking on water? Is that why they were unloading it?
No, probably not. Probably just the fact that it lightened it up so that it wouldn't, less chance of things flying around. Wooden ships back then, things that got moved around, got to fly, that's one thing that would tear up the ship. The stuff, heavy stuff that was on top and knock people overboard, those kind of things. It was dangerous. So they get into a point there to get rid of it. I watched a movie one time, what was the guy named Hornblower? And Horatio Hornblower, and it was those old type of ships, not as old as these, but when those guys got into a battle with cannonballs and everything, and sails and stuff started getting busted up, they'd be chopping the ropes off those things and throwing it overboard to get it off the ship because it could do more damage. So that's where that thing is. Now, when neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and no small tempest beat on us, all hope that we would be saved was finally given up. That's an interesting comment for Luke to make it. You could understand the centurion and the Roman guard and other, but here's Luke. Here's Luke. Oh, and he said that we would be saved was given us. He's including himself on it. Not only is it an interesting comment to make, it's probably one of the most honest comments that you'll find.
It was a good time for the captain and the owner to think again about what Paul had said.
Yeah, and that centurion.
And look at him possibly in a little different light.
And it would. And I'm sure that Luke, in this point, in in his honesty, he's saying at this time of the ship, he was thinking like Paul, loss of life. He's expecting loss of life. They're in a bad situation. How many times have we had near-death experience that we weren't so sure we were going to survive? Y'all want to go back to Laura? How many ran? How many stayed here and wish they ran?
Me.
Me? Me? That's why I said, somebody said something to me, I said, 30 years I lived in Florida, and the worst hurricane I experienced was in Louisiana. First one I get in Louisiana is worse than all the ones I was in Florida in. So, make it pray. But now here's Paul. Notice this. But after long absence from food, then Paul stood up in the midst of them and said, men, you should have listened to me. I told you so. Sometimes, and I told you so is very appropriate. Because here's what he's saying. When he sits there, you should have listened to me, is saying, listen to me now. Here's the reason you need to listen to me. Notice, and not have sailed from Crete and incur this disaster loss. And now I urge you to take heart, for there will be no loss of life among you, but only of the ship. Okay. Cargo and ship, that part's coming true. And here's why I'm going to tell you that. Here's why I've changed on the loss of life. For there stood by me this night an angel of God to whom I belong and whom I serve. Okay, it wasn't just a vision. It was a message delivered by an angel. Saying, do not be afraid, Paul, you must be brought before Caesar, and indeed God has granted you all those who sail with you. So he said, God's going to spare the lives of everyone on this ship, Paul, because God wants you to get to Caesar. Therefore, take heart, men, for I believe God that it will be just as it was told me. However, we must run aground on a certain island. Which we know to be true. And notice, okay, how bad was Laura? How long did Laura last? Felt like forever, but how long did it really last?
4 hours.
Huh? Oh, you ran.
A few hours.
Yeah.
2 hours. Probably about, from the time it started affecting us and when it finally gone, probably about 8 to 10. Yeah, several hours. In fact, at one point when I looked on my phone, it looked like that bottom half got right on top of us and said, hey, I want to sit here for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, how would you like it for 14 days? Now, when the 14th night had come, as we were driven up and down in the Adriatic Sea, we've got no control of this ship. This storm's been going on for 14 days. About midnight, the sailors sensed that they were drawing near some land and took soundings and found it to be 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little farther, they took soundings again and found it to be 15 fathoms. How deep is a fathom? Anybody know?
12 feet,
I think 12. I think Ron's right. So it's getting nearer and nearer. Then fearing lest we should run aground on the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for day to come. We just won't be able to see. They're not seeing any stars. They're not seeing anything. They have no idea where they are. Huh? 4 feet. So 60 feet would be 15 fathoms. 80 feet would be 20 fathoms. So they dropped 4 anchors. I think 4 anchors would be enough, you would think. Notice, and here we go at this point. As the sailors were seeking to escape from the ship, when they had let down the skiff into the sea under pretense of putting out anchors from the prow. I want you to think about that. You ever see that rat scurry off a ship? You ever seen that? Rats running off? Well, that's what's happening. The rats are scurrying. These are the rats, if you know what I'm saying. They're like, we're the only ones that can sail. What are we going to do? We're going to leave y'all to yourselves. But Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay in the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the skiff and let it fall off. Guess what? There went your way of escape. And notice the way Paul put it. Unless these men stay, you cannot be. In other words, you won't live either. You let these men get off, and none of us are going to survive. No, and as day was about to dawn, Paul implored them all to take food, saying, today is the 14th day, you have waited and continued without food and eaten nothing. Why haven't they eaten?
Fasting.
So to speak.
Storms, seasick, everything.
Storms and eating food, when they're being tossed like that, it just don't mix. It don't do well. So now they're anchored. Therefore, I urge you to take nourishment, for this is for your survival, since not a hair will fall from the head of any of you. Not even going to lose a hair. They must have been young men, eh? And when he had said these things, he took bread and gave thanks to God and praised them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. Then they were all encouraged and also took food for themselves. Now I want you to think about this. I wish God would tell us, but he's not. I wonder how did many of these people turn to God when all this was over? Look how he's using Paul. Look at the influence. When everybody else is falling apart and you keep it together, you can have some influence. I mean, isn't that what we're supposed to do? What did Paul say in Philippians concerning his strength? Where did it come from?
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens. All his strength came from Christ. All his strength came from trusting in God. And you know, that's the thing that we have to do. Donna asked me how I got through last week. That's the only way.
Might have also added to his testimony when he was in Rome, when he was talking.
Oh, there's no doubt that it would, but right now I'm talking about the influence that he had among those that were on the ship. And that would, if that centurion traveled all the way to Rome, if that centurion happened to have to testify for Nero, even. You know, what's the centurion going to say? He saved us. We listen to him. The only reason we're here is because of him. And that's the point there. Okay, so we're going to stop there. I just realized what time it was. And we'll pick up there in a couple weeks. So, but that's the point. Our strength comes from God. And no matter what disaster is happening, we can still be a shining light. We just have to go on. We got to trust in God he can get through it. He's promised to get us through it, so we got to trust that he will. And that's what Paul is doing.
When it said that God had granted their lives, it was, to me, it's like he had prayed for their lives.
And probably have. And they've probably been asking, God, how's it, what's going to happen? And probably praying for himself and his other companions. And this angel came to him and, hey, just not going to think that you got an answer. Here's your answer. Here's your answer. I wouldn't doubt that a bit. Let's stand and sing about trust.
When we walk with the Lord in the light of His word, what glory He shares on our way. While we do His good will, He abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus, but to trust and obey.